What's going on, YouTube? Today I'll be showing you something really cool and really powerful, and it's how I managed to connect my Raspberry Pi Pico W to my NodeJS backend to start getting sensor data in real time. Now for this video, I will be using the MPU 650 sensor, which is a 6 degrees of freedom accelerometer, to show acceleration data in real time in my NodeJS application. But in reality, what's cool about this video is that this is applicable to general use cases. So you don't, number one, have to be using the Raspberry Pi Pico W. You could use an Arduino in this technique. And number two, you could really use any sensor suite you want. You don't have to use the MPU 650. So this is really a good way to, if you're watching this video, to kickstart your IoT applications and get you started in the IoT space. Now you can see the architecture I use for this tutorial is actually pretty simple. So with this fancy diagram I have for you guys here, we have a 3-part architecture where the Raspberry Pi Pico W is communicating with HiveMQ, which is an open source, free, awesome MQTT client, which is great for managing your IoT applications. So I really recommend it, and that's why I'm showing it in this video. And then finally, in turn, it's communicating back and forth in real time with your Node.js server backend to show you the sensor data. So that's also very cool. So we'll be going into getting HiveMQ set up, getting this set up in MicroPython, and finally showing you what I did in the backend in Node.js. So if you think this is going to be interesting, please like, comment, subscribe before we get into it. And that being said, let's not waste any time. Let's jump right in. Okay, so step number 1 for this tutorial is just go to HiveMQ.com. Really simple, and just go here and click Cloud and click HiveMQ Cloud and just click Sign Up Now. It's free to start with 10 gigabytes, which is more than enough you'll need to start testing your IoT applications. So as you can see here, I have my URL set up, and we want to go into the cluster and click Manage Cluster. Now you're going to go and want to create a user, so click Access Management and go create your user. But that's pretty much it in terms of getting started. So you will need that user and the password, and you'll also need this cluster URL that we'll use in MicroPython and our Node.js backend to subscribe to our MQTT client. Okay, now before I get into the Raspberry Pi side of things, I'm just gonna note that I'm not gonna go into the physical setup of my sensors or setting up my Raspberry Pi with this environment. Just know that I'm using MicroPython with Thani, and I'm just imagining that you guys already have some sort of setup ready to go before you started this video. If not, there are many examples on my channel and online getting the Raspberry Pi Pico W set up and also getting corresponding sensors set up, especially the IMU. The MPU 650, I have another video for that. But now in terms of the imports, let's get into that. So if you're using the MPU 650, you're gonna wanna use this import. Now there's more explanation of this on my channel, so if you're curious as to how to get the MPU 650 set up, you can just go watch that video. Now the most important import here is this MQTT client. You absolutely need this client to connect to HiveMQ. Now I tried to pip install this client, I tried to use manage packages, but it wasn't working. So what I did instead was I just found the GitHub libraries online, and I just copied the corresponding code I needed in the corresponding directories here. So you need this directory structure, lib.umqtt, and these 2 files. I'll link that in the description below. I'll make your life easier. And if it did, like, comment, subscribe. And then also I have these constants here. So this is just an internal thing I did where I just put all of my constants, my sensitive information, into a constants file, and I just pulled it. So such as the server host name, my internet password, my user password, all that stuff. And I just highly recommend doing that. It's just better practice. Now let's jump into these functions here. So as you can see, the first function I define is pretty self-explanatory. It's just connect MQTT. So this just uses that library that we found, and it connects to the HiveMQTT client with the corresponding information. Now, some information we want to go through here is this client ID. So you can set up this client ID to be whatever you want. I just called it Mahmoud, which is my name. Now, the other information is the server. So the server is just going to be the cluster URL you got from your HiveMQ account. And then also you can just specify the port as 0. Now in terms of the user and password, that's what you set up in your access management. So if you did that, you just copy that information to there. And this other stuff we're not gonna go over, but you can just copy that in there as well. Now we just make a connection after all that information is correct. And if it is, you should return a client that has a successful connection to your HiveMQ broker. Now the next function we have here is connect to the internet. That's a pretty straightforward one. If you're using your Raspberry Pi Pico W, it's really easy to connect to the internet. I have another video on my channel that shows you how to do that. But essentially it's just this function, and you just pass the internet name and password. So if you never connected to the internet with the Raspberry Pi Pico W, you can just copy this function in and pass in your internet and password, and you should be set to go. And obviously we need internet connection to connect to the broker online. Now the next thing I do is I just connect to the internet using that function. and I set up my MPU 650 variables that I need. If you're not using the MPU 650, you don't have to worry about this. And then also I set up my client, so I just connect to MQTT using the corresponding function above, as I just explained. Now finally, the last thing here is I'm just running a while loop for endless amounts of time until I hit stop, where I'm just reading my sensor data. So I'm just getting my acceleration and temperature data from my sensor. And what I'm doing is I'm getting that data and I'm publishing it to the broker. So I need to publish it so my Node.js backend can communicate with the broker and subscribe to this data and get that data. And so what's interesting about this function is you can pass in the topic. So as you can see here, I have these topics. I just labeled them whatever I wanted, something I thought was appropriate. So for AX, I just said Pico W AX. So you can just label your topics accordingly. And that's pretty much it in terms of your Raspberry Pi side of it. Now, let's just jump into the Node.js side. Okay, so jumping into the final portion of this video, the server side, Node.js side, where I essentially just defined a really simple NPM project. I just dove straight into the index.js file and specified these constants here. So as you could see, I have my .env, what I'm using again to get my environment variables. So that's just for sensitive information. You don't need that. You can just code those host names and whatever you'd like into your file directly if you want, if you're doing that locally. And then also what I do is I get the MQTT. So what I do here is I just npm install MQTT. So to get that activated in index.js, you just say require MQTT. Now I also define these constant variables again, as we saw in MicroPython, similar to that. We define the host, which is just the host we get from creating our account. So you should know that by now. And then the port, once again, is 0. Now for the client ID, we specify a new client ID because this is a new client. So this is just our Node.js client. It's different from our MicroPython client. You can call it whatever you want again. And then we have our connection URL. You can just copy this and it just formats it with this MQTTS protocol. And you need that format to connect to the broker from Node.js. Now also, I'm just showing one topic here. So we need this topic because we want to subscribe to a specific topic to pull the information to our server. As you saw on the previous screen, we actually have a bunch of topics. I'm just using one for the sake of simplicity, but you can subscribe to all the topics here. Now, after we have that, we just make the connection. We pass in the variables here, client, clean, connect timeout, and then hopefully if that's correct and you have all the information with no bugs or typos, what's going to happen is you're going to make a connection. If there is an issue with your credentials, you're going to see this error and it's going to show you an error message. And that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and start this project. It's going to show us the message as you see on line 29 if we start getting messages from the broker. So I'm just going to, not npm install. We want npm run dev. So I'm just running this project here. So as you can see, I connected correspondingly, which is good, which means that my broker accepted my connection. But what we can see right now is we're not getting any information. And that's because if you go here, we're actually not running the code. We're not sending information from the sensor. So if I go ahead and run this, we should see that change. So let's give this a second here. This is exciting. Okay, so we started publishing information from the sensor, so that's good. Now if we go back to our app, we can see we're getting that information in real time. So that's really cool. Now if I go and move my sensor, my accelerometer, we're seeing higher values in real time, which is great. So that means I could start sending my user the acceleration and the X direction in real time. So that's pretty much it. That's how to set up connecting your Raspberry Pi Pico W to Node.js application end to end. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section down below. I think this is just a really powerful way to kickstart your IoT applications. I mean, it's just uphill from here. You can connect to React front end, start visualizing the data, and you can just do a lot of cool things from here. So if this did help you in any way, please like, comment, subscribe. I think it's really useful. I'd like, comment, subscribe if I found this video because it took me a while to figure this out. So that being said, guys, stay tuned. And as always, thanks for watching.